This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
An estimated 50 people killed in ethnic violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Uganda bans mass gatherings in Kasese district as a second person dies from the Ebola virus. And China's President Xi Jinping receives the highest state honor as he begins a state visit to Kyrgyzstan. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Raman Young with a preview of your business news.
Yes, indeed, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The International Monetary Fund completes its first review of the extended credit arrangement it has with Africa's second largest oil producer. We'll also be taking a closer look at Algeria's efforts to reduce the amount of child labour in use in the North African economy. The details of the stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, we begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 50 people have been killed in attacks between rival ethnic groups in Ituri province. Now, according to authorities, the incidents took place in the town of Jugu. The government has been insisting that the number of the dead is 38, but the governor of Ituri said that as of Tuesday, 50 people had been killed, adding there could be more bodies still unaccounted for. Jugu has been at the epicenter of conflict between the Lendu and Hema communities for years. Now, Uganda's Ministry of Health says there are currently no confirmed cases of Ebola in the country. A child who had tested positive for Ebola has now been repatriated to the Democratic Republic of Congo. He is a sibling to the first victim who died on Monday. Meanwhile, 4 other family members have also been returned to the DRC. But on Wednesday, a second victim died, a 50-year-old woman. Here's CGTN's Ebola Virus with more.
Uganda and the DRC agreed to repatriate the family of 5 after a second victim died on Wednesday. The 50-year-old woman who died is a grandmother to the first victim that passed away on Monday. The family had traveled from the DRC to attend a burial of a relative who died of Ebola. The WHO says the family will get better care in the DRC, where an outbreak has lasted 10 months. Tests are being carried out on 3 new suspected cases at the Bwera Hospital in Kasese. Uganda has now stepped up surveillance efforts along its border with the DRC, and the public has been urged to avoid large gatherings. More frontline workers will also be vaccinated on Friday. Around 5,000 health workers have already received a vaccine. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Well, as Uganda works to contain the Ebola situation in Kasese district, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, is set to visit the DRC to monitor the response to the Ebola outbreak that has been raging there since August last year. Now, the WHO chief's visit comes as experts from the global health body are considering whether or not to declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. The declaration is made when highly infectious diseases have a high risk of spreading to other countries. Our CGTN's Chris Ochambringa has more for us on this story. He joins us live from Kinshasa. Chris, with this visit, do authorities on the ground expect any change in practice or policy as far as how the WHO is handling the Ebola crisis in the DRC?
Well, the authorities here are expecting a more coordinated international response now that the disease has spread to Uganda. This is something that they have been fearing all along, but it has happened. But some of those who have spoken to are saying that they are waiting for the outcome of a meeting that's going to be held tomorrow between the WHO chief, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, and other health experts in Geneva. They're going to discuss whether this outbreak constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. That will involve, bringing in more resources, a robust international response, and it might also involve having some travel and trade restrictions, which can be very devastating for the economy in this country.
And just to dig deeper into that, with the spread of the virus into Uganda, how likely is it, or just in what ways is it going to impact border crossings and surveillance between countries in the region?
Well, what happened is yesterday health experts from Uganda and the DRC held a meeting, and they agreed that one of the things that they're going to do is step up the surveillance at the entry points. Now that part of the DRC has, that part of the border between Uganda and DRC has very many porous areas, and that's how the 5-year-old child who has since died passed through this family, in an area which had no authorities to conduct health checks. And so now they have positioned people, health experts and security people in all those areas to stop people from entering or going out of the country without being checked by health experts.
And of course, we know that much of the Ebola response was hampered by violence in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. But what is the security situation like at the moment?
Well, the World Health Organization said recently that they have noticed an improvement in the security situation, which has enabled them to carry out more vaccinations and reach out to people in very hard to reach areas. Now, that does not, dismiss the fact that this security situation is still very fluid. Anything can happen. It's very unpredictable. The people are just hoping that now that there's going to be a more robust international response, there's going to be an improvement of the security situation, and that some of these armed groups will be contained. But it's something that is very, very unpredictable.
Well, Chris Ochemrenga, thank you so much. They're joining us from Kinshasa on the regional response to Ebola. Now, as Uganda continues to continues to try and contain the Kasese Ebola situation, countries that neighbor the Democratic Republic of Congo have also stepped up screening at their own border points. Now, on Friday, the World Health Organization will hold a meeting in Geneva on the crisis. It has now been more than a year since the virus broke out in the DRC, but it remains very difficult to contain. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
Since the first case of Ebola was detected in the DRC in August 2018, close to 1,400 people, about 70% of those infected, have died. The latest deaths occurred in Uganda after a 5-year-old boy and his grandmother died from the virus. They had crossed into Uganda from the DRC on Sunday. 7 other cases have been confirmed in the country, and Uganda's government says 50 people are suspected to have come into contact with those infected. Now, the reason it has been so difficult to contain the virus in the DRC is down to violence by militia groups in the affected areas and cultural practices. Over 100 health facilities in the DRC have been attacked in 2019 alone, forcing health workers to suspend or delay vaccinations and treatments. Now, the Ugandan government has taken several measures in an effort to curb the spread of the virus. They include a ban on mass gatherings. A team has been dispatched to identify others at risk, while close to 5,000 health workers have been vaccinated against the virus. In neighboring Kenya and Tanzania, the screening of all passengers and travelers at its border points has been stepped up. Back to you.
Well, now let's turn to our continuing coverage of events in Sudan. The Transitional Military Council has announced a major security reshuffle. This follows an earlier statement which accused over 70 officers of plotting a coup against the Military Council members. The Transitional Council claims that most of the officers are Islamists in an apparent reference to their alleged support for former President al-Bashir. Meanwhile, talks between the Military Council and opposition groups are expected to resume through Ethiopia's mediation efforts. Let's bring you more on these developments. CGTN's Adel Al-Mahrawi joins us live from Cairo. You know, this news, Adel, of a security reshuffle has certainly raised some concerns. What more can you tell us about it?
Well, it is definitely a concern, and it reflects a lot of changes within the security management, not just in the military, but in the intelligence as well. And since the military council has deposed President Omar al-Bashir, there have been several, actually numerous movements and reshuffles in the heads of security apparatuses, including the police force, the rapid protection forces, and the leadership within the Sudanese Intelligence Bureau. And all of this indicate that there is still a sort of an instability going on within the security apparatus itself. As you've mentioned, the Sudanese Military Council has reshuffled around 68 exactly officers, and there have been, despite some reports that this was part of a plotted coup against the military council, an official spokesman from the military institution in Sudan has denied that there was any attempt for a coup against them. However, the reshuffle maintains to be one of the biggest since the Transitional Military Council rose to the leadership and took the leadership of Sudan.
And that military council, of course, to some extent is supposed to represent a sense of leadership. But would this reshuffle indicate that there are divisions within the military council itself?
Well, definitely, it's one of the indications that there is an attempt, at least from Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the current military chief, to maintain that all the generals below him in the hierarchy are within an agreement to his plan and his political process. And the reshuffle is definitely a step to ensure and secure that part. There have been some reports of earlier division within the military institution after the attack that the Janjaweed forces, or the part of the Sudanese military that was earlier part of the Janjaweed militias, have attacked protesters and have killed around and injured over 100. And since then, this was one of the biggest clear indications that not the entire military institution are moving, or even the generals within the military institution are using the same political tone when it comes to dealing with the protesters and the civilian powers. And in that regard, with this big security reshuffle, there seems to be sort of a hesitance within this military leadership, and there are many finger pointing within that Abdel Fattah al-Burhan may not be enjoying as much stability or absolute power within the military institution as he tries to portray.
And so with this instability, with this finger pointing, how could all of this affect the political process in Sudan?
Well, it definitely will elongate the political process. It will make those who are already reluctant from the civilian powers to engage in talks with the military council more skeptic, especially that there has been a huge trend of skepticism about the true willingness of the military institution to hand in power to the civilian authority. So unless there seems to be a solid stance from the military institution, this is the only way that will gain the trust of the civilian powers and the protesters, and make sure that whatever agreement is reached in the negotiations with the military council will in fact take place. And this is the main concern that several powers within the Sudanese protesting opposition powers have concerns about. And this has been actually one of the main fueling for the reluctance to reach a solid agreement from both parties.
Adel Al-Makhraoui, thank you so much, joining us there live from Cairo. Let's turn to news from Ghana now. The abduction of 2 Canadian girls last week has triggered fresh debate on insecurity. Crime against foreigners is a new concern in the West African nation, where in just 3 months, 4 foreigners have been kidnapped, including Lebanese and Indian nationals. Although the Canadian girls have been rescued, security analysts now want the government to step up intelligence to avert further incidents. CGTN's Nabil Ahmad Rufai reports from Accra.
The 2 Canadians, Lauren Tilly and Bailey Shitty, were kidnapped last week outside their hostel in Ghana's Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi. They are both university students volunteering for a non-governmental organization, Youth Challenge International. Ghana's government says the girls were rescued after a sting operation by the police.
5 Ghanaians and 3 Nigerians are in custody for this incident. One of the suspects is reported to have sustained minor injuries. Other investigations and possible arrests are still ongoing. The victims have been flown to Accra, are currently in Accra. They have been in contact with the Canadian authorities and are undergoing the necessary evaluations following a traumatic incident like this.
Kidnappings are rare in Ghana, but the abduction of the Canadian girls is the second time in a month foreigners have been targeted. A previous rescue effort freed an Indian national. Last year, 3 Ghanaian girls were kidnapped in the Western Regional capital Takoradi and have yet to be found.
Our investigation regime is extremely porous, with criminals having a full day, knowing full well that nobody would hold them to account.
Security analysts say Ghana must beef up its security efforts.
We would have to capacitate the security agencies and agents with the requisite logistics to aid them to do their work. Apart from that, we need to sharpen their skills in intelligence gathering and other operational, expertise. So they are in line with 21st century counter-terrorism, transnational techniques.
Meanwhile, the Australian government says it will support Ghana with $51,000 to help build capacity of local security personnel.
Despite the government's assurances that the security in Ghana is not volatile, many still worry about the threat of terror attacks. They want to see swift prosecution of the suspects arrested for the recent kidnappings. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Well, let's take a short break now. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Zimbabwe writes to world conservation body CITES demanding to sell off its ivory stockpile to fund conservation efforts. And a new study shows Nigeria is among the African countries that are leading the uptake of family planning methods. We'll tell you why.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a state visit to Kyrgyzstan from Wednesday to Friday. There he'll attend the 19th meeting of the Council of Heads of State of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. His visit is expected to boost cooperation for further development between the two countries. CGTN's Mark Fontes has more.
A welcome ceremony for Chinese President Xi Jinping was held in the Kyrgyz capital Bishkek, hosted by President Sooronbay Jeenbekov. The trip marks Xi's second visit to Kyrgyzstan in 6 years. China and Kyrgyzstan have made substantial developments since establishing diplomatic ties 27 years ago. During his visit, President Xi highlighted their strong mutual trust in politics, economic cooperation, reliance in security, and coordination in international affairs. Xi also said China lauds the achievements Kyrgyzstan has made in reform and development and looks forward to its progress in safeguarding national stability and promoting economic development. The Chinese leader called on the two nations to further collaborate with frameworks like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, adding that both sides should support multilateralism and oppose protectionism with the goal of building a shared future. Last week, President Jeenbekov attended the book launch of the Kyrgyz edition of Xi Jinping, The Governance of China. He says he considers the book a great material for Kyrgyzstan to learn from China's experiences in reform and development. Jeenbekov said Kyrgyzstan values China's influence in international affairs and is willing to enhance cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative. He said the country would like to get on board the express train of China's economic development and push for further progress in their bilateral ties. During Xi's state visit, he was awarded by President Genbekov with Kyrgyzstan's highest state honor, the Munus Order of the First Degree. The Munus Order is given to individuals for their outstanding contributions to the protection and strengthening of the state and democratic society, the unity of the people, as well as the economic, spiritual, and intellectual potential of the nation. The awarding ceremony was held in the Ala Archa state residence after the two leaders oversaw the signing of a series of agreements between China and Kyrgyzstan. Mark Fontes, CGTN.
Let's head to Zimbabwe now, where the government is looking to sell off part of an estimated $300 million ivory stockpile to help fund conservation efforts. It has submitted a joint proposal with 3 other Southern African nations to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, known as CITES, calling for a relaxation of restrictions on the sale of ivory. CGTN's Farai Makutoya has more.
Locked up and under heavy guard sits a treasure of ivory that Zimbabwe says could help pay for the upkeep of its wildlife. But a ban on ivory trade has left game reserves woefully underfunded. It's tried to mitigate the deficiencies through elephant sales and recently lifted a ban on buffalo bow hunting to lure big spending trophy hunters.
The authority doesn't receive even a cent from central government, and some of those monies that we raise, we put it back into conservation so that at least people can still come and view the animals, people can still come and see those big numbers. Our elephants, we are doing man management. We do a lot of law enforcement. There's need for vehicles, for patrols, there's need for radio, for communication, there's need for water.
Cash from the efforts have been plowed back with some success, evidence which Zimbabwe believes strengthens its case to be allowed to trade its tusks. The Southern African nation has threatened to boycott future CITES discussions on elephants if it's not allowed to sell off part of its stockpiles. Farai Makutoya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
RightsCon is the world's leading summit on human rights in the digital age. It brings together business leaders, policymakers, general counsel, government representatives, technologists, and human rights defenders to connect, strategize, and shape the future. Tunisia will host this year's event that comes to Africa and the Middle East for the first time. Let's bring you more on this now from CGTN's Adnan Chouachi.
Tunisia is hosting the 8th session of the World Conference on Human Rights in the Digital Age, RightsCon. The international event seeks to reinforce and protect the digital human rights in order to establish a free and open internet network and to consolidate the rights and freedoms guaranteed by international laws and treaties.
We have a program of 450 sessions. There's 17 program tracks. It's everything from artificial intelligence and algorithmic accountability to data protection and privacy to smart cities to the sustainable development goals. So there's really a range of topics that will be covered, elections and misinformation. And so this is really the place where we talk about everything that is intersecting with human rights and technology.
RightsCon endeavors to ensure the progressive development of international digital human rights in Africa and the world.
And we're still not knowing what's best to do. And specifically in the context of African countries, I think it's really interesting because we see a lot of governments wanting to leapfrog and have new technologies right off the bat. But it's really important that we take the time to think through these technologies and how to best institute them in a way that benefits the user best.
Digital strategies shed light on growing consumer discomfort with large-scale data collection by international companies and some social networks.
In my opinion, everyone should be self-determined about what happens to their data, because just like your own body, your body belongs to you, so the data belongs to you as well. So everyone should determine by themselves if they want to give those data away or not.
Digital security, business and human rights management, and other rights related to modern technology and its influence on human rights are also on the agenda of the conference.
In 2018, the World Conference on Human Rights in the Digital Age was held in Toronto, Canada, and brought together more than 2,500 participants from over 118 countries. Organizers say this year's three-day event has been successful on all levels. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A new study by researchers at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health shows contraceptive access in 8 sub-Saharan African countries is increasing at a faster rate than previously projected. The average annual rate of change was 1.92%, peaking at 2.25% for married women. The numbers far exceed the 1.4% benchmark set at the 2012 London Summit on Family Planning. And one country that is boldly embracing contraceptives is Nigeria. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam takes a look.
29-year-old Salome Abraham is set to close the chapter on childbearing. She has come to this primary health care center in the outskirts of the Nigerian capital, Abuja, to get free contraceptive implants. She's opted for a modern contraceptive. The little rods are said to be 99% effective, lasting up to 5 years.
God has blessed me with 4 of them. My prayer for them is to grow well and I'll be able to take good care of them and not give birth to many children I cannot take care of. That's why I'm here.
Salome is among a growing number of Nigerian women seeking modern contraceptives to prevent unintended births. But the use of contraceptives in Nigeria is incredibly low, even though some sensitization is gradually changing attitudes. On the average, Nigerian women still give birth to more than 5 children. The number is even higher in rural areas.
Averagely, let me just say between, at times we can get up to 10, at times we can get 7, at times we can even get up to 15. So depending on what they are coming for and where they are coming from. So maybe averagely you can say between 8 per day.
Religious beliefs and literacy compounded by poor access to family planning services are blamed for the low intake of contraceptives. But Nigeria needs to embrace modern family planning to achieve the newly set Sustainable Development Goals.
Some of them, because their husband refused them. Some of them, even some before that, like the Catholics that said they don't want contraception, some of them are coming now because at times things are hard these days. You can't just say you will do natural and then the man might come and you may not be able to do the natural and something will happen and you'll be pregnant. So even they don't really want it before, they are coming out, they are doing it.
Nigeria is among 69 countries that have committed to providing access to contraceptives to 120 million people by 2020. By the end of 2018, Nigeria recorded 13.9% rise in access, far below the 36% target it set for itself. But exceeding global targets with a wide margin is reason enough for program implementers to pat themselves on the back. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And let's now go to Raman Young for your latest business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. The International Monetary Fund completes its first review of Angola's extended credit arrangement. And Algeria's efforts to reduce child labour are also in focus.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the programme. The International Monetary Fund is our starting point for this segment. It's completed the first review of Angola's extended credit arrangement and it's approved a disbursement of nearly $250 million. Now that has taken total disbursements under this programme to about $1.25 billion. The IMF's Deputy Managing Director and Acting Chair David Lipton says Angolan authorities have demonstrated strong commitment to policies agreed to under the programme. However, a weakened external environment heightened by the volatility in the international price of crude oil is posing quite a few challenges to the reform programme being carried out in Luanda. Child exploitation is a global problem. Sexual abuse and forced labour can affect a child's physical, mental and emotional development. And that in turn has led to various governments, including that in Algeria, taking measures to try and eliminate child exploitation altogether. Here's CGTN's Laura Olubengo with more.
11-year-old Yasser Balabasi lubricates bicycle gear. He spends most of his days here, fixing bicycles and installing parts. Despite his brilliance in school, hardships have forced him to work in order to earn a living.
I open the shop in the morning and I stay here until late at night. I have a skill in repairing bicycles. I spend many hours with them. I also receive customers and their requests. Many older people treat me as a boy, and I actually do adult work like them.
Yasser is among the approximately 5% of children aged between 5 and 15 years in Algeria who have stopped going to school to support their families. Many families push their children to work as they try and avoid authorities.
I am obliged to work despite how much I like studying and learning, but my family is in dire need of financial income, and I am now the sole breadwinner.
In 2015, a United States Department of Labor report listed Algeria among the top 16 countries that have achieved significant progress in elimination of child labor. But not everyone agrees with the figures.
I do not think that these statistics are true. There are many cases out of control, especially in the remote and rural areas of Algeria, often with the help of the families themselves.
The actual number of children leaving their childhood to join employment remains unknown. Experts argue that the tasks are often too much for the children's bodies and ages. The children think the circumstances leave them with no choice.
Our region here lacks many facilities for entertainment and comfort and supervision of children and young people, such as science clubs and sports. Even if I stop working, I have nothing to do only to deal with unemployment and delinquency.
Statistics indicate that 100 cases of child labor have been registered in Algeria since January this year. But the government has not legislated the types of work that children should not perform. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Now, Ethiopia could require as much as $2.2 billion to modernize its telecommunications sector. Heavy public investments have been set aside in order to propel Ethiopia into becoming a regional economic powerhouse. But revenues from manufacturing industry and state-controlled sectors have not grown to the level expected by the authorities in Addis Ababa. That in turn has led to a need for reforms aimed at encouraging competition and foreign investment in order to rebalance the economy. Parliament is due to debate a new law creating a new telecommunications regulator that could issue licenses to multinational mobile companies, which, if passed, could see them being allowed entry to that market by December. Over in South Africa, the American tech giant IBM has announced the expansion of its quantum computing efforts to Africa in a new collaboration with Wits University. The Joburg-based institute will be the first African partner on the IBM Q network, with Academics across the continent set to use this tech for a broad range of research purposes. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with more.
Researchers at WITS will investigate the use of quantum computing and machine learning in the fields of cosmology and molecular biology.
It's actually the first time in modern human history that the new technology becomes unveiled, and Africans are not the spectators, but they are active participants, which is more than just any tangibles. And the tangibles will be seen in 10, 15 years down the line.
We're giving access to a quantum computer over the cloud to numerous universities across the continent so that we can do fundamental research, so that we can do industrial applications, and more importantly also work on developing the skills that will be needed for the quantum era.
The research is likely to focus on several areas. Fundamental physics and the early universe research is the most obvious area.
On drug design, there are biochemists, also at WITS, who are beginning to look at simulation of molecules for biochemistry to see how we can actually mimic HIV strains using quantum computers, because quantum computers are able to mimic the small scale much better than computers that we are used to.
The local financial services sector is also very interested in quantum computing and its possibilities, especially when it comes to encryption and quantum locks.
If I'm a very clever or evil hacker, I can actually find means of hacking into pins and everything. And now there's a lot of interest from banks, primarily on what is called encryption, to actually ensure that they're able to have, they're called quantum locks. They're able to lock any possible means of hacking into encryptions, which quantum computers can do much better than modern computers.
The news of the collaboration will have scientists across the continent salivating in terms of the possibilities and the amount and type of research they can do in the future. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, Kenya Airways has increased its route offerings by launching flights to Rome and Geneva. The new routes are the airline's fourth and fifth European destinations after Amsterdam, London and Paris. Now, the introduction of these routes is part of KQ's network expansion strategy that steered towards growing its market share, boosting revenues and margins, and of course turning the company around after years of making losses. The launch of this direct route completes the circuit effectively across the UN headquarters in New York, Nairobi and Geneva, making logistics and connectivity a lot easier for travelers.
Today, I am delighted to join us all in the launch of this Kenya Airways flight from Nairobi, Rome into Geneva. And on behalf of the government, I would like at the onset to extend our gratitude to the Swiss government for granting KQ, our national carrier, the right to fly and land in that beautiful country. This is a confirmation of where we want our relationship to go, and the ambassador has itemized our expectations of what this national icon is going to make it possible for us to do.
This is an important route for us, that we want to put Kenya on the map. This is not just to fly and make money, but we also want to prove that Nairobi is a natural hub for Africa. Many of you have come from India on the Mumbai flight, which I'm very grateful for you coming all this way and then going all the way over there. You had other choices. Some of you came from Johannesburg. So this is proving the point that Nairobi is a natural hub for Africa. We're in the middle, we're on the equator, and we want to serve you better.
Well, in West Africa, a Chinese firm that refurbishes photocopiers is exporting a batch of 300 machines over to Ghana. And they're also planning to set up production facilities in the West African market. CGTN's Will Kistanyabwa has that story.
3 containers filled with printing equipment are being shipped to Ghana from Shinua County in China. Xinyan Technology, a Chinese company that refurbishes copiers, is planning to set up a production facility based in Africa.
First, we need to set up the stage, and second, we need to set up the funds. Each year, the government sets aside 50 million yuan to support the printing sector in Xinhua.
Over 2,000 people from Shinua County work in China's printing sector. They operate more than 60,000 print shops nationwide.
I went to Shaanxi when I was 16 years old. When I was an apprentice, I learned to repair photocopiers.
These printer experts have long mastered machine maintenance, but they used to work separately. With the support of the Chinese government, Xi Technology was able to bring this knowledge together.
Africa is home to 54 countries and 1.5 billion people. There is a huge market demand.
Wilkie Sanyawa, CGTN.
Right, then I'll leave it there for the time being. But at the top of the hour, I'll be back. The East African Community countries, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, they all announced their spending plans for the next fiscal year starting on the 1st of July. Today, some pretty big spending plans and quite a bit of pain coming your way as far as taxes are concerned. We'll have the details on that and plenty more right here at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, we will take a short break, but here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, a group of South African teens aim for a world record by flying a self-built plane across Africa.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A group of brave and daring South African teenagers will be attempting to break a world record by flying a self-built plane across Africa. They also want to inspire young Africans through their journey to dream big. The plane took 3 weeks to assemble and is now ready to be flown from Cape Town to Cairo. The first-time flight coincides with Youth Month being celebrated in South Africa. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
The Sling 4 aircraft is built in South Africa and exported around the world. It was put together for the first time by a group of 20 teen technicians.
So the building process, I learned a lot. So I didn't actually know that you get different parts of an airplane. I didn't know you get a center fuselage. I only knew there was a cockpit, a tail, and wings. I didn't know a vertical and a horizontal stabilizer, but I actually learned a lot of aviation terminology.
The plane has passed the security checks and has been cleared for flight.
Safety was an extremely important concern. That's why engineers and technicians were part of the program all the way through. The plane is actually built up to factory standards, and we've got a safety plane that's also flying along with 2 safety pilots that's going to make sure that everything goes 100% right and that the students make the right decisions in difficult situations.
It will take off from Cape Town, the southernmost point on the continent. The teens are hoping to print their names in the record books.
I'm going to be one of the pilots. I'm going to be flying the tour over South Africa, Cape Town, and then fly to Windhoek. I'm going to be getting off from Windhoek and another guy will be taking over. The reason why we're doing this is to give everyone a chance and the feel to fly from Cape to Cairo.
I'm overwhelmed, to say the least, but excited beyond measure. I can't wait for this. This is going to be one hell of an adventure. This is something extremely new, and very few people have done this.
The crew will need to take heed of the weather and political instability in some areas, but they will stop in several African countries, including Namibia, Malawi, Tanzania and Kenya, as they make their way to the northern part of the continent.
We're going to disadvantaged areas where we'll be giving disadvantaged people the flight for the very first time ever, and just showing them that what we've done and showing them that your past does not equal your future.
It's expected to take these adventurous teenagers 5 weeks to complete this historic flight. The final destination is Egypt's capital, Cairo, the land of the pharaohs, and the Great Pyramid of Giza. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And let's go to Botswana now, where Khabane pottery, which was established in 1983 to create employment for local citizens, is still going strong. But the craft in the southern African country is at risk of disappearing altogether because there are very few master potters. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy has more.
The Khabane pottery is located approximately 15 kilometers northwest of the capital, Gaborone. It is a special place for those who are passionate about pottery. The pottery skills of the women and men here relate to the practice of using a specific technique to produce artifacts for home use, corporate designs, animal figurines inspired by the environment. Martin Kabwe is a master potter who has been in the pottery business for more than a decade. Molding skills has seen many young men and women fall in love with this traditional practice in Botswana. The experience of pottery making is so fascinating that I was granted a rare chance to try my rather limited pottery hands, making my own unique piece. It's breathtaking looking at clay wares and decorative crafts on display everywhere. In the room, other women artists can be seen molding various elegant merchandise, though with little hope of making any profit from their hard work.
Sometimes we get worried when there's no business because this is mostly our livelihood.
Despite the creative and tireless efforts of potters to preserve the tradition in Botswana, the industry remains on the decline. The practice of pottery in Botswana remains at risk of extinction because of the decreasing number of master potters, low prices for finished goods, and the increasing use of mass-produced containers.
Most people, especially the young ones, they're not interested, especially in taking up pottery as their career because they see that, well, maybe it is a dirty job or maybe it is something that does not give them enough income.
The government of Botswana is now trying to help potters through the tourism industry by encouraging locals and foreign tourists to support the works of the potters. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN, Khabane, Botswana.
Well, time for a short break. Here's what's coming up in your sports news. South Africa's Banyana gear up for a must-win clash against China at the ongoing FIFA Women's World Cup.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point.